Kia ora koutou. My name is Tanya Greenwood. I'm here from Biosecurity New Zealand today to talk about Skunkvine, a culinary delight that crept in. I did try to be a bit creative with my title, so hopefully you appreciate that as I go through my presentation today. So first off, I'm here from the Incursion Investigation Plant Health team. It's always good to remind all of you in this room what my team does. We are one of several sister teams responding to this hotline, so I'm not working in isolation, but within the Plant Health team, we're responding to that 0800 80 99 66 hotline that Ben just referenced, as well as the 2022 release of our online reporting tool, which is awesome for getting really high quality photos and capturing detailed information. So the Plant Health team, like we say, we're responding to this hotline 365 days a year, 7 days a week, between the hours of 8:30 to 9 p.m. If you want to call it 2 a.m., be my guest, but I won't get back to you until the next morning at 8:30. So what types of things are we receiving through this hotline? Anything to do with plant health. So that can be insects, fungi, bacteria, viruses, plants themselves. And they can come from any sort of pathway of introduction, so passengers, sea containers, aircrafts. I'm sure I'm just naturally wind dispersed over here, anything you can think of. So for example, if you go overseas, you get home, you open your suitcase and out pops a live scorpion, you're going to call this number. Okay, so that's an example. And our team is looking to take fast action. We're an agile team in the plant health space, so we're located across the North and South Island. There's 10 of us now, so that's awesome. And we'll be taking actions to hopefully eradicate, contain, or control whatever you have found and have reported to us. So my talk now is going to segue into what is Skunkvine and let the investigation begin. But before I begin, I must give credit to Erin Gillespie, who's no longer on my team. She's left to pursue a degree in law, but she was actually the lead investigator on this. So I'm presenting on her behalf and my team, and I did have the honor of going on some of the site visits with her as well. So I'm fairly knowledgeable, but if I can't answer your question at the end, that'll be why. So in 2023, a super knowledgeable contractor working on behalf of Auckland Council actually discovered what was at that time suspect skunkvine. It was growing at a residential property in Auckland. And so that contractor, being super knowledgeable, took some photos and actually collected samples, which is something we would normally advise against doing initially, but anyways, they did that. Reported it through to our botanist team because at that time it was not known to be new to New Zealand, and hopefully I'll clarify what that means. And so sure enough, our botany team got to work looking through those photos, looking at the plant material itself, and was able to confirm that yes, this did look like an exotic species not known to be present in New Zealand prior to 1998. And they reported that through then to the Plant Health Incursion Investigation team, which was my colleague Erin. So once that first site of detection was reported through, that same contractor was also out doing other weed control and found a second site a few months later. And so that's when things really started to kick off, and it looked like there could be a bit of a problem here. But first of all, we needed to know what we were working with and how exactly did it get here. So first of all, what is skunkvine? Padera fotida. So we'll go through and answer that question and some of the unknowns. So skunkvine is a annual or perennial fast-growing vine that is native to South and East Asia, predominantly preferring the tropics and temperate regions. And interestingly, a very morphologically variable plant. So the photos up on my slide show a beautiful kind of purplish undercoat on the leaf, but this can vary to being green as well. And most of them can be hairy, but it can also be not hairy. So there's a bit going on. Generally, it is really good at crawling and creeping its way up other vegetation, and is very effective at, if a piece of it breaks off with a node, it can just take off from there. So it's super good at surviving. The other thing is we needed to understand a bit more about the risk it could pose to Aotearoa. So Biosecurity New Zealand conducted a formal risk assessment for this vine, and that helped identify sort of the climatic suitability of where this vine could become a problem. And early on, we identified that Auckland and Northland could be impacted. We also took note of other places in the world where it had become problematic, including in Florida and the Everglades, Hawaii, and in Australia and New South Wales. So in those areas, the vines are particularly problematic as they creep into the canopy and sort of smother out other vegetation. And so that risk assessment really solidified the fact that we should take action and look to try to eradicate this. And also not known to be present in Aotearoa, so the botany team was super good at looking back through herbaria records and just having a good check to make sure this wasn't something we already had here. And sure enough, it wasn't. So then let the next steps begin. So there were some barriers associated with this piece of work. No investigation is ever completely clear-cut. So one of the initial challenges, I guess, for Aaron and my team was trying to understand where did it come from. The only commonality between those two sites in Auckland was that they were found alongside another weed plant commonly known as the chameleon plant that Auckland Council contractor was there controlling. And both of those plants, both Skunkvine and the chameleon plant, are used for culinary and medicinal purposes. So that was maybe a link, but actually how it arrived, we don't know. So as I mentioned, Skunkvine has medical and culinary purposes, or beneficial uses, I should say. So I did a bit of research up into that. So culinary-wise, it can be added into curries, just used as a cooked vegetable. The leaves can be dried and consumed as a tea, and it can also be ground up as a powder. And in terms of medicinal uses, there's actually scientifically published papers that show that it can be a anti-inflammatory, like for aiding in stomach aches, and there's several other uses. So clearly, it looked like the plants had been intentionally planted at these properties. There were also language barriers that were encountered throughout this investigation, so communicating about the risks and sort of how the plants arrived and all those things was a bit of a challenge. And also the plant itself as being new, or the new status, meant that there was no powers to manage it under the Biosecurity Act. So that leads nicely to the next slide, where we discuss how we look to manage Skunkvine. So in collaboration with Council, Auckland Council, the Department of Conservation, and other areas across Biosecurity in New Zealand, they came to the joint decision that making Pedera foetida, or Skunkvine, an unwanted organism was a logical first step, so that's what we did. And then the decision was made to eradicate it at those two residential properties. So a contractor was hired to go out and treat with herbicides, and then to follow up 6 months later. And those treatments were effective. So we thought, great, case closed. We developed this fact sheet, which is featured up on the slide, to help educate not only those individual property owners, but they're also distributed out through the Department of Conservation and Auckland Council's weed networks, getting that message out that this is something we don't want establishing in New Zealand. And so we thought, great, case closed. But unfortunately, the following year, in 2024, Auckland Council notified Biosecurity New Zealand that they had found some more skunkvine, which is good because it meant that the education was out there, the system was working how it should. But from an investigator's point of view of having a nice, clean, slam dunk, not so good. So where were the other sites? They were also within the Auckland region. They were also associated with properties where they looked to be intentionally cultivated, so they were growing in gardens, except for one, and I'll go into that in some more detail here. So these are the three additional residential properties where skunkvine was found. And the fourth site that was reported on iNaturalist New Zealand, which is awesome from a finding new things as their emerging point of view. And this was actually growing in a reserve. So on a first glance, we thought, oh no, like here's an example of it escaping, getting out, and causing trouble. But in actuality, when our team went out and investigated that reserve, we found that it was actually cultivated again. So this was confirmed in an interview with the property owner in the photo to the far left. They had actually planted it in that reserve along with the banana and avocado. But because it was in the reserve area and sort of maybe slightly less tended to than those growing in their garden, it actually started to creep up and smother out other vegetation. So it was sort of like we don't want that. So again, these plants were controlled by a contractor and educated with the fact sheets, etc. So where to from here? There is the need to educate and increase coordination to control skunkvine. The fact sheet was actually amended after these additional detections to include Padera spa, and that is due to the fact that there are several species that look very morphologically similar, and it just seemed like a better logical move. 2 species of Padera were made unwanted organisms, so not just Padera fetida, but also Padera linguosa. And I forgot to mention earlier when I was discussing skunkvine, there's actually 33 species in this genus, so just to give you an idea, and they all kind of look the same. So if you're out and about in your mahi and you discover something that looks like skunkvine, it's probably best just to report it through and let the plant experts do their thing, the botanists and the like. But the fact sheet was also translated in the second round of notifications, and that was to overcome some of those cultural and language barriers that we encountered throughout the entire process. So it was translated into Chinese, Korean, Japanese, and it might be a few others. And the fact sheets were also redistributed out back to council to aid with educating. So again, one of the best things we found with skunkvine was actually that those properties and the property owners and the tenants needed to be educated about the risks that this particular plant could pose to Aotearoa. And so that's sort of where the approach, that's where we wanted to get to. Again, I want to reiterate that for my team and probably many areas of our staff here in this room, iNaturalist New Zealand is a super helpful tool for notifying new detection sites. And so I would encourage the likes of you all, if you see it, to upload anything onto there as well. And where things have sort of settled in the dust, there's been a lot of work and talk on this exotic vine. It's left to be controlled by the individual property owners. So as it is an unwanted organism, it's prohibited for those property owners to propagate, trade, or further distribute this plant. Those property owners were all made aware of that, and they also agreed to have it removed by a contractor on their properties. But going forward with the support of Auckland Council, we're looking to hopefully completely, wipe this one out. But it will be an ongoing watch the space. And I'd just like to finish with some acknowledgements. I know I probably have only talked for shorter than my time because I wanted you all to have so much time to ask me questions. But again, thanking Erin, who is the lead investigator on this one, as well as my manager, the botanists within Biosecurity New Zealand, Carol and Michael, all the contractors involved, Auckland Council, the Department of Conservation, and any others who I may have missed. And I'll just end with our reporting method there for any of you who may not have that on your radar. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tanya. Any questions? We've got another 15-minute talk, so we've got a couple of minutes for questions.
Just a quick one for me. How do you think it was brought into the country? Do you think it's all individual people bringing it in, or maybe traded within themselves?
Yep, good question. I can't say for sure how it was brought into the country. We don't know. I would suggest it was done so illegally, probably because there's no eligible pathway for entry. The botany team did do a lot of genetic work on the plants, so they did look like they're from the same, DNA. So it would suggest that they could have been dispersed out from within that community, yeah. You're welcome. And
Is there any thought to acknowledge if people are cultivating it for use for medical or culinary uses to sort of push Māori alternatives that people can use?
other like native plants, or yeah. I mean, that is certainly a good idea. I think the other acknowledgement potentially as well is that in the powdered form, skunkvine would be eligible to be, brought in, or a capsule form. So it's just, educating and understanding, I guess, within different cultures, plants have unique qualities, and so it's just an education piece, but definitely not a bad idea. Shelley?
Thanks, Tanya. Has it been found anywhere other than Auckland?
At this stage, no. Yeah. So I would like to encourage, however, any colleagues from the Northland Regional Council to keep this on your radar, as that could be a site of detection in the future, and I guess technically the Waikato as well. So but
Great talk. What sort of time frame is involved for that initial risk assessment and then time from discovery to being declared an unwanted organism?
good question. It can vary, but generally our risk assessment process can be done fairly quickly when we're needing those questions answered. Making an unwanted organism, or so revoking or adding a UO, can take quite a bit more time just because of the consultation, both internally and externally. I'd say best case scenario, Nick, you could help me, but I mean, it takes about 6 months to a year to, in this case it was faster though, but it could take up to 6 months to do the UO status change.
I'm Phil Brown, I'm the Biosecurity Manager at Auckland Council, so thanks very much to you and the team for working with our team on this one. Kelly, the contractor that initially saw it now works for us, so...
Yay! Yeah, she's awesome.
So that's great. And just acknowledging, though, that there's a real challenge in these culinarily or medicinally traded species. We've got a range of them, you mentioned the healing plant, there's others that we just don't think we'll ever actually be able to eradicate because of the way that they've been traded around. So, just ones we can keep on top of, but I'm not promising everyone that skunkvine, watch out for it in your own regions.
Yes, thank you. Good point. It does add a definite layer of complexity to the management side of it. So thank you very much, everyone.